All right, let's move on to the final team here in the obvious ones. And I actually took this one and moved them up to the obvious group here because I think the Chargers should be considered an obvious candidate here. I think the biggest reason that maybe they're not obvious is that the Kansas City Chiefs play in their division, and that is obviously problematic if we're talking about a worst to first team. However, from an offensive perspective, they have the quarterback, right? Like of every other name we're going to say, the rest of this podcast, and frankly, even before this podcast, obviously Joe Burrow notwithstanding, Justin Herbert's better than these guys. 100%. No doubt in my mind, Justin Herbert is better than all the other quarterbacks we're about to talk about through the rest of this podcast. That alone, I think, makes them an obvious candidate to be a surprising value fantasy offense. The fact that people, you maybe disagree with me, Dalton, but the fact that Justin Herbert has been buried in drafts so far because of Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh have been run heavy with guys like Tyrod Taylor and Colin Kaepernick before. Justin Herbert's been buried. Ladd McConkey, I think, could be a huge fantasy value this year. Their receiver room, beyond him is definitely a question, but Josh Palmer is not a terrible NFL player. Their tight end room is definitely better than it was last year. Even if just these guys are not needle movers, they can actually block in the run game. And I definitely think there's going to be a value running back out of this group here. Whether it's Gus Edwards, whether it's Kamani Vidal, everybody's favorite topic of the month on fantasy Twitter, or maybe it's some J.K. Dobbins miracle season. I don't think that one's likely just because of the whole injury, the Achilles and stuff like that. But I think there's going to be value in this backfield. I think there's going to be value in Herbert this year, and I think Ladd McConkey could be, maybe he's not going to have a Nico Collins type of seasons, but he certainly could be a Tank Dell type that people just don't understand how good he is as a player. So I like the Chargers. I don't know if I like them enough for them to be a finalist here, Dalton, because I think we'd be insinuating that they're going to upset the Chiefs to win the division. I don't know, but I thought they were a pretty strong candidate, stronger maybe than some people think.
According to BetMGM odds, they're the second most favored behind the Bengals here to make this this leap. I mean, Jim Harbaugh got it done after 8 straight losing years for the 49ers. He took over and 13-3 his first year, exceeded the win total each of his first 3 years in San Francisco. So I wouldn't be shocked. They're in the Chiefs are, they're playing for like the Super Bowl and stuff. So I could see them not even caring about a seed. So that said, I do respectfully disagree with you as far as fantasy here. They're going to be so run heavy and try to win on defense and not pass the ball. I believe Yahoo made an Instagram post with me saying that Herbert's my QB 20 or something. So and that's not even a shot on Herbert as much as I really, really love the quarterback class this year in fantasy. I do. And I just don't see the upside there on this. Look at his receivers are getting drafted. He doesn't have a top 40 receiver or a top 20 tight end getting drafted. So the math is just simply going to be hard there. McConkey, I just don't get, Harmon. Maybe I am reading this wrong, but how I see it and how the coaches have said it, he's only playing in 3 wide receiver sets. Like how is that going to work? And in this offense, only playing 3 wide receiver sets. I will believe that
when I see it. I will believe that Ladd
Johnston's
McConkey
that bad, so he'll be playing over him. Because I just think I know that you're not a Palmer guy, but he's going after McConkey in these early drafts, which just seems wrong to me. And I even saw someone speculate that Brendan Rice could get involved here. I don't know how crazy that is or not, but I know you're a McConkey guy, so tell me I'm crazy. To me, he's only playing 3 wide receiver sets on the most run-heavy team in football that's not going to score many points.
I will, like I said, I will believe that Ladd McConkey is not playing in 2 receiver sets when I see it. Number one, he played outside at Georgia last year. Like, he was not a slot receiver I know he's a small white guy, but he was not a slot receiver for the Georgia Bulldogs last year. He played more snaps outside. He can absolutely be a flanker. Definitely he has issues against press, but he's a separator against man coverage. I mean, he's easily the best separator on this team. I think Josh Palmer is fine. I think Josh Palmer could actually end up being a pretty decent value. He's like a good number 3 receiver, which is on this roster an accomplishment because, dude, Quentin Johnson last year, it was as bad as it gets. I don't care. People will be like, well, he had 500 yards last year. Okay, you play a bunch of snaps with a good quarterback, you're going to fall ass backwards into 500 yards. He was not I don't want to be mean here, but he was like the worst starting receiver in the league last year, at least on a film basis. I mean, his reception perception results are towards the historical bottom. I mean, we're looking at like the bust of the bust type seasons from him. We're talking Devin Funchess, Terrace Marshall, Jalen Reagor, Justin Hunter, all of these guys. Yeah, and when Greg Roman talked about Quentin Johnson, I like that they said, hey, we're going to do things with him that aren't just lining him up outside and kind of having him go to work on downfield routes. We're going to get him on the move. We're going to get him on crossing routes, stuff like that. But like the second thing he said was like, great guy. That doesn't speak a lot of confidence to me that he's a player they're going to be invested in. To me, I'd be stunned if McConkey doesn't lead this team in targets. I mean, and just honestly, even not playing it through two receiver sets, that would be crazy to me.
One final thought. Justin Herbert, 4 years in the Chargers. They total offensive plays first, Pat Thorman's tweet. Harbaugh, Roman coach Niners 4 years. They were 31st in total offensive plays, 25th in situation neutral pass rate.
I get it, like the pass rates, the pace of play, all that stuff. How did that go for the old Chargers? Not that well in terms of like winning football games. I imagine they're going to win a lot more with Jim Harbaugh than they did with Brandon Staley, that's for sure. And I think that Justin Herbert can be more efficient as a passer in this type of offense. Overall, I have more faith in the Chargers going forward than I do this year. But I will kind of keep the candle lit that this Chargers offense is going to be better than people think. Than they think this year, and they're going to throw the ball a little more, I think, than people believe. But we won't argue too much on that because I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation for us to have again leading up to the season, Dalton. And I don't think that they should make the finalist list here simply because they're playing a division with the Chiefs, and they don't really have too much juice beyond Ladd McConkey in my opinion, about players that can be really good players. So.